Hi, my name is Jill Monroe, a member of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we're thrilled to be talking with writer, director, artist, Titus Kaphar, Andre Holland, and John Earl Jelks, the cast and creatives behind the film Exhibiting Forgiveness. I introduce you to the African members on the call, starting off with Al McGee, Jonathan Midcore, Reggie Ponder, Samuel Leggett, Preston Ruben Regatta Pagania, Carolyn Hines, Karan Lenore Kelly, and Michael Swell. We're going to kick things off, and I'll see you on the other side.
Shadows on the wall. Noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old Mother Goose. Lions on the loose. They don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathing flame on my counterpane. That doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoot. I make fun the way they run. Life doesn't frighten me at all.
Mama Joyce! Oh my God!
Hello.
Hey.
I ain't seen you for 15 years, but now you want to be somebody's granddaddy? You somebody's daddy?
Right,
Now.
I don't want him to hear this.
Listen, I need you to speak to him. I need you to talk to him.
No.
He has changed.
He ain't changed.
It's just gonna follow us home if you don't deal with it here.
Let's get it.
He gave me you, Terrell. He was my first love. He was my first love.
Hey, you got flaws, Terrell. Ain't you got flaws? I'm not the same man you used to know before, Terrell. That's what you said, right? Why are you still making excuses for him?
If you don't forgive others of their past sins, then you can't be forgiven.
Have you asked yourself once, one time, what's best for us? For him, for your grandson?
This ain't about him. It's about Mama.
What we do, what we do, brick by brick, that's how we move.
I put it on canvas so that I could hold it by the throat.
A foundation built with bricks that we were never given.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm Carolyn for Carolyn Talks YouTube and podcast channel. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, and thank you so much for this film. I love this film. It is beautiful. But what I want you all three of you to talk about is the concept of forgiveness as absolution for the sinner, but also about how forgiveness itself can also be a form of control and abuse of the person who has been harmed. So Titus, I want you to begin because this is partially based on your story. And then we'll have Andre and John Earl.
You just jumped in there with the heavy questions, didn't we? Okay, we didn't even get a warm up. Okay, all right. Boom. I do not believe that forgiveness is absolution. I don't see those things as the same. We talk, and we've had a lot of conversations about the fact that forgiveness is also not necessarily reconciliation. Those two things are not synonyms. And absolution, I don't even think is a part of the conversation. I think that to forgive someone, the kind of forgiveness anyway that we're talking about in this film is the kind of forgiveness that allows us to unburden ourselves by the things that we carry. So if you've harmed me, then there is a debt. And my forgiveness is the action of saying, you know what, you no longer owe me that. I'm not going to hold that against you. That is not necessarily saying that, and after that, we are going to go fishing together. We are going to go have a drink together. Those don't have to be the same thing. I think it's dangerous. I want to repeat that again. I think it's dangerous when we talk about forgiveness as a synonym for absolution. It is not. There are victims who are harmed in these kinds of situations, and they should not be asked to forget these things that have harmed them. In fact, if we pretend like we are supposed to forget those things, oftentimes it does more damage to our psyche than it does to anything at all. And it will just come back to haunt you later. So it's better just not to play that game.
Yeah, I think that I can't say much better than that. I think that's exactly right. And I think sometimes the language we use around forgiveness maybe needs to be adjusted. You know, we often say forgive and forget, but maybe we should be saying things like remember and do better.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And not to be held hostage because of that. Because sometimes you can be held hostage because you feel that, okay, I'm holding this in, this whole thing about should I forgive this person or not, only because you love them dearly. So I believe that, like Titus said and Andre, I agree with them both that, you know, you definitely have to put boundaries up.
Yeah, I agree completely. And Andre, I love the way you put that just now. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Samuel Leggett with JVS Media Productions. Thank you so much, Titus, for bringing this movie into the world. I had the honor of checking it out at Sundance. This was one of the best films I saw then and still one of the best films out right now. So I just wanted to tell John and Andre, the dynamics of you as a father and son is very intense, but it's very rich and real and raw. And so the question is really for both of you. On the aspect of generational emotional trauma, I want you guys to kind of break down, how did you guys work with Titus through the script to kind of prepare you guys to be vulnerable to the concept of what your characters are going through at that time, and then also dealing with the reality, the cost of forgiveness. And even with that, did that affect you guys after filming the film?
Well, he went in, didn't he?
Yeah, they're not playing on that.
Right? Whoa. You know, here's what I have to say about that, Billy, is that Titus wrote it as is. I mean, everything was on that page is what we portrayed in these characters. And it was not easy, but I can truly say to get these emotions across from what he had written, he made sure that it was a safe space and allowed us to tap into all those emotions that was on that page, that was in that script. And one of the greatest things that not only do I trust Titus and what he wanted to do with this and as a director, but I also trusted my castmate, you know what I mean? That I can go there and still not feel that I'm gonna be, you know, all the way out with this thing, that he was gonna be able to catch me. And that's one of the reasons why you're probably seeing what you saw, but because it was already there. What we did was just actually just stayed in the truth of it, laid in it actually, slept in it, you know, and just said what was there and felt it for real. And yes, I took it with me. I was feeling that like days on, even now, man. I mean, I'm still dealing with some of the stuff that I've learned from this film, man, you know. So yeah, that's my take on it, right?
Well said, man. Yeah. I mean, I would say similarly, you know, one of the things I think about a lot is like the ways in which Black folks know stuff, like how we acquire knowledge and how that knowledge is often shared. You know, as you were talking, John, I was thinking about, you know, the Black church, for instance, right? Yeah. You know, when we all go to church and somebody get up to sing, we all know within the first 5 seconds whether or not they got it, right? We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to say that. We just all know, right? And if they ain't got it, somebody gonna say, "Baby, that ain't your name." You know? And like, I think, you know, it's one of the things I love most about us. And at the same time, you know, there are ways in which we know things that maybe aren't so comfortable to know. So in this case, for instance, when we started talking about this project and about this idea of generational trauma, what we found, I think it's fair to say, is that we all had some experience with it. And so it made it really, you know, difficult to talk about, but ultimately very healing to talk about. And so I think part of what the work that this movie is doing is trying to invite other people into that conversation. So yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate you asking it, man.
You guys had powerful performances, and Titus, thank you so much for being here and what you've done and contributed to this story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just had a coffee.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm just so proud to see you guys here. I'm gonna give you YATicket.com. I really enjoyed this film. And Titus, this seems to be another one of your artwork, a piece of your artwork, because the two, LeBron and Terrell, they seem to be your subject matter for this piece of work. And you have very many layers in this film. Did they fully understand the layers in this film when you put the script together? And also, did they understand that you as an artist, that you were putting together a piece of artwork? And did y'all understand that?
That's what we connected on from the beginning. I mean, I made it clear to everybody, I don't have a reputation as a filmmaker. What I have a reputation is as an artist. So what we're going to get in here and do is we're going to try to make art. And so that was, I said that to my team. I said that to producers. I said that to everybody who was getting involved with, we were getting involved with. And the thing that I knew conceptually, but didn't realize in my heart is that, oh yeah, actors are artists. So that was the very thing that we connected on every single level. I mean, Andre and I, as we worked in the studio, I was teaching him how to paint. He was coming to the studio over a 3-month period, and just we would start talking about our different practices and how it's similar to my painting practice, and what is the relationship between bringing a character to life off the page and bringing a character to life on a canvas, right? So that idea of it being art was fundamental to the entire project, and there was nobody involved who didn't understand that at the base level.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll just say similarly, Al, I feel like a big part of the job of the actor is knowing how to ask the right question. So for instance, you know, when we read the script, one of the things that was really apparent, right, is that there is a certain amount of anger that Terrell feels towards his father, right? Yeah, exactly. But when you start asking questions about that anger, and you understand that actually, like, there's something underneath that anger that's fueling it. And then there's something underneath that, and underneath that. And if you know how to ask the right questions, and you have the courage and the bravery and the rigor to continue to ask those questions, like Mr. Jelks does, genius Mr. Jelks over here. You keep asking those questions, then you ultimately get to something that's useful to you, that maybe you didn't know was there before, you know? And you put it in your pocket and you carry it around. And then one day when you're on set, like when we were in that basement, suddenly it starts to show up in this kind of magical way. So I think you're absolutely right to, you know, point to the layers that exist in the story and also within each of the characters. And again, it's down to the brilliant writing and also to the honesty and vulnerability with which Titus entered into relationship with this story and with this script. He came in vulnerable, and it demanded that we all meet him in that place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And just to add on is that those layers was like, you know, climbing a ladder. You know, we couldn't miss any steps. Because if you miss a step, you might say, oh my God, you know, you fall. Yeah. So
Thank you for answering my question. I really enjoyed the film. And also, I felt this film also. Ooh, did I feel it? Thank you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Hi, gentlemen. My name is Reggie Ponder out of Chicago. And Andre, I hope to see you in Chicago next week when you come to the Chicago Film Festival. So looking forward to see you coming there.
Be the light on.
Well, you know, the light stays on. But anyway, I do want to make a little bit of comment, Andre, to your question about your thing about we know in the first 5 seconds, but we do all know that sometimes we get surprised in the next 10. There's somebody every once in a while they be like, oh snap, I was wrong. So,
I need to come to your church. Nah, we don't wait 10. You got it or you don't.
But I want to ask all of you guys, because Titus, you talked about that there's not absolution. I would like to know where, if at all, for all of you gentlemen, does forgiveness and love intersect?
Man, that's what's these big questions. Man, that is a challenging question to enter into. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm just gonna like we'll just talk this out together. But the first thing that comes to mind is actually probably not what you may be thinking. To me, I think the first love that comes to mind is self-love, and that self-care, and that just the idea that if you are going to heal, if you are going to get better, then you're gonna have to go through some of these forgiveness processes. And that does mean accepting the idea of loving yourself. That this is the idea of forgiveness isn't just for the people who we are forgiving. And in many cases, it is more about our health and self-care than it is about anything else. So for me, it is that self-love that I think of, right? That we're not carrying these burdens because they're heavy on us. And then once you start there, that's when it trickles out, right? You first are able to say, okay, I need to love myself in this process. I need to stop carrying this burden. And what you realize in that is, oh, great, this is excellent, because now I'm not passing on this burden to my children. And my children don't have to pass it on to their children, right? And so then it trickles out from there to your love for your children, your family, and everybody else around you. So for me, that's how I think of that question.
And I totally agree with that. And but I also want to say that does it really, in terms of intersect, or it becomes like a crossroad? You know what I mean? Because you can hit that crossroad where you don't know where to go with that. You know what I mean? Do I really give this person, or do I just try to forget? And I think that that crossroads, when you get there, you're gonna have to, choose one. You're gonna have to choose one of those roads, and that road you're gonna have to stick with. If that's the road of love, then okay. But if it's a road, like you were saying, self-love, it starts with that. It definitely starts with that.
Let me add one more piece to that. Because of that self-love, that actually means you give yourself space to say, I forgive you, but we don't need to be in relationship, right? We are toxic for one another, right? You've had that relationship with somebody where you're just like, we just don't do well together. I can let go of all that stuff, but we don't need to be hanging out. This is not beneficial for anybody involved. And I think that also comes out of a kind of a self-love and a self-care.
Any thoughts there, Andre?
Man, so many. I'm trying to organize them. I mean, one thing that comes up is when you ask the question, I was thinking about love and like what that really means, you know what I mean? And when I think about love, I think about home, right? Like my home and the community I grew up in, where a place where I knew I was loved. I knew what love looked like because I felt it and experienced it all the time. I was around people who loved like my Black skin, they loved my hair, they loved all the parts of me. So I think that's what love is. So when I think about forgiveness and relationship with love, I suppose, if there's been a breach, that forgiveness or potential forgiveness is a doorway through which one might begin to repair that breach. And sometimes that repair, as Titus is saying, doesn't look like we're in relationship with each other. We're on the phone all the time. Maybe it looks like I'm gonna love your skin and your hair and all that you are from afar. And that's okay too. But that's a deep question, man. I'm gonna think more about that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you, fellas. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan from Casual Movie Lover. Watched the movie last night. I loved it. My question is for Andre, and you've played a wide range of different characters. You played a doctor, you've played a lawyer, you played an attorney, you played a sports agent, scientist. My question is, what's the process like, and what sets you apart from other actors in your approach in playing these type of characters?
I don't know about being set apart from them, man. I love being in community with other great actors and artists, and I've been fortunate to do that. To get a chance to work with some of the greats over the years. In terms of process, I tend to be pretty rigorous, but also flexible, right? Like the training that I have is one in which, I have a lot of different kinds of tools, and so depending on what the role is, I feel like I have a lot of resources at my disposal, which is great. I tend to ask a lot of questions, and trying to be as specific as I can. I think that's one thing that sometimes actors sometimes let themselves off the hook with is that specificity. You can always ask a deeper question. You can always be more specific. One of the things I love to do is like these interviews with the characters that I'm playing, right? So I'll like get with a friend or a coach or somebody, and we'll do these long interviews where I'll just tell them to ask me anything, and I am in the character, and they ask me, well, what did you have for breakfast? What was on the front page of the newspaper today? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? What do how many, sisters do you have? What was your favorite toy as a child? All these little things which seem kind of innocuous and random, but you'd be surprised, man, like over time, those things find their way into the character, and they are all things that help you stay in the story. So I like to work like that, man, imaginatively, trying to engage my imagination as much as possible, trying to be as disciplined as possible. And then most importantly, listening. I think that's the number one thing. Tell me if you agree, John.
Oh man, you see I'm nodding over here like that. That's the number one thing is to listen, man.
Yeah. I think you didn't ask me this question, but I think in the basement scene, you see an extraordinary example of great listening. You also see extraordinary example of characters with depth. You can see what they're doing on the surface and understand that, as he's saying, there's so much more inside. There's no superficial surface acting anywhere in this film. These artists engage this at the deepest level. I was telling folks last night, I think for those folks who don't understand acting, we think, oh, you give somebody a script and they pretend. And that is not what the greats do. That's not what they're doing. They're embodying something. They're manifesting something. If it is pain, they are feeling that pain. If it is joy, they are feeling that pain, that joy. They are not playing at anything. And that to me is what sets these folks apart and what sets the performances apart in the film that you just saw.
Hi, my name is Ruben Peralta from Coca-Cola. How are you guys?
How you doing? Good. How you feeling?
I'm doing great. For many great artists, escape, the art is a form of escape. And it was for Tyrell, it was probably for you, Titus. Like creating this character probably was a way of escaping for your reality, the way you paint and everything. Also, you reflected on your Tyrell character. It is for you as an artist, for all of you, your art a form of escaping your reality to live a different life, or just to escape for something that's going on in your private life?
That's an interesting question. I think that when people see my work, sometimes they do think that it is a form of escape. I don't practice that way, unfortunately, because I think it would make my life a lot easier, actually. I use my work to go deeper in. Like that, for me, that's the purpose of the work. That's, that scene in the film where the gallerist is coming to the studio. He's not expecting her to be there. He is like locked in. He is doing this thing. He is doing this emotional work that happens in the studio. And somebody comes in and disrupts that, right? It's disruptive because he is so far into that process. It's not an escape. It's not an escape at all. It's a tool to understand ourselves more and to understand the world around us more. I like a good action movie as much as anybody. I really, really do. But for the most part, the films that move me most are not escapist films. Those that move me. I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm just saying me. The ones that move me most are the ones that make me feel more human, because I see somebody else's humanity reflected on the screen, and that justifies my own. I've had that experience before. I've felt that way before. My mother acts like that. My father did something like that. It makes us feel connected. So I know a lot of artists, a lot of friends of mine who practice in the way that you're talking about. It is more of escape. It is a way to get away from daily life and the things that they struggle with. But that's never been my particular approach.
How about you, Andrew and John?
I totally agree with you when you said that, but just to add on, sometimes, some artists, like actors, and I used to for a long time, is that I used to use it as a certain kind of therapy. You know what I mean? In terms of, since I didn't have no therapist, I couldn't afford one, I would use that but I wouldn't use it as an escape, but more or less to connect with what I had to do as a character. And so I would basically try to break that down through therapy of asking those questions, like Andre was saying before, to try to figure out all the smallest little details about why this character is doing what he's doing, or why he's acting the way that he's acting, or why he's feeling what he's feeling. I mean, and that helps, a lot, you know what I mean, in your daily life for the most part.
Yeah, speaking of therapists, one used to say to me whenever I would try to get around things or not deal with them, he said, well, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, there you are.
I think that's true, especially in relation to this. It's like if you try to leave yourself at home, right, or use the theater or use the work as a way of avoiding things, you're gonna bump into yourself at some point, right? Because it's like when we talk like Hamlet, for instance. We keep revisiting these old forms, Hamlet or Othello. Denzel's gonna play Othello, not because Othello is necessarily a great, amazing part, or because Hamlet is. It's like we want to see your Othello, man. We want to see your Hamlet. That's why we come back to it. So you gotta put yourself in it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can say a whole bunch more about that, but I think without the specificity of your own heart and your own spirit put into the role, into the scenes, you don't really have nothing. And that's what makes this job so, I ain't gonna preach, but that's what makes this job so exciting.
We got 45 minutes. Come on, man.
Is that, like you were saying before, Titus, it's like we're in the basement doing that scene, right? Which is a very intense scene. It's very emotional and difficult to navigate. And we know that we are intellectually, we know we are in a basement on a set, doing a scene. But our bodies don't know we pretended, right? We are experiencing the thing that the characters are experiencing. So like again, you can't run from it. You can't avoid it. You got to go into it and through it. That's the only way out. And I think the key in doing that is to do it with people like these folks, and like Ingenue and Andrew Day and our whole cast and crew who created a safe container within which we could wrestle with these difficult emotions.
That actually made me think about the park bench scene. Yeah, I wonder if you want to talk about that. Like the idea of escape does not work with what happened in that scene.
No. Yeah, Ingenue Taylor is like, outstanding. Yeah, she
just next level.
I mean, we've known her for I know her from the theater. John did too. Like we've known her for a long time. We did a play together, Ingenue and I did, and she changed my whole career working with her in ways that I can't even tell you. She's so astounding. But the scene that Titus is talking about is the scene that's on the poster. No, not that poster. On the other one where we're sitting outside of on the playground. Jermaine's over there playing, and the boys are playing basketball. And on the day of shooting that scene, we had done it a couple of times, and it was working. I think it was going well, And there was a point at which we could have said, okay, we got it, let's move on. But you encouraged us to do it a little bit more. I think you sensed that there was something else there. Yeah. Ingenue and I also felt like maybe we could go, make it 5% better. And on this last take that we did, because we had this trust with each other, I think I threw a line at her that wasn't in the script, that she wasn't anticipating. And you could see that line hit her. And what she goes through in that movie, what you see in the movie, is what Ingenue is going through. Do you understand? Because she had the courage to allow herself to feel all the things that happened in that moment. And that is a courageous, a heroic thing that actors do. Yeah. That ain't, like you said, man, that ain't no pretending. No. That is the real article. Yeah. And thank God for her. Thank God, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That scene is my second favorite, of course, after the basement one. And because I don't have a good relationship with my dad, when my mom passed, and that relationship, it's still stuck. And that conversation that your character has with Ingenue, it's just like, it's a definition of love. She loved this person, but she don't know why she's loving it. And that's even hurting her son. Like, she doesn't care, but she loves this person. And she don't know if she loves her son because she just gave it away to him. And the definition for me of everything, it's what you show in the title of the movie. You are exhibiting a forgiveness, so everyone has a definition of what is a forgive, or who to forgive. So thank you so much for this movie.
Appreciate that, bro.
Hello, I'm Karan Lenoir Kelly of Karanism.com and Love Music Pleasure. And I want to talk about the women for a moment because there are two quotes that stick in my head. Andra Day's character, Aisha, said, whatever you're not dealing with here is going to follow us back home. That was a very important point. And also wanted to mention the great Anjanou Ellis Taylor as Mama Joyce, making the statement that you have to forgive or you won't be forgiven. And we can talk about forgiveness in a lot of different contexts, but it's often been weaponized in the faith. It's been recognized as a work of reconciliation. And I'm going somewhere. I want to talk about the art as the unfinished work, form of reconciliation, especially the part where you see he begins to wipe down the faces and to redefine their shape, redefine their bodies. My daddy was an artist, so I go through this all the time. But how do you see the art as it represents the unfinished work in the characters?
Oh, wow. Well, first I want to get back to that first thing that you said. And I want everybody to know this about this film, and this will change the way you watch the film. The women in this film are the arbiters of truth every time, every time. Sometimes, you know, there's some knucklehead brothers that don't want to listen, but the reality is at each stage of the script, there are these strong women that step up and say, this is the truth. Whether you like it or not, whether you feel this way or not, here is the truth. You have to look at it. It happens with Michael and his wife at the beginning when LaRon shows up and she says, it's not that simple, y'all. It's not that simple. And then it happens again with Aisha and Terrell at the hotel. You cannot keep running from this. Everything can't be worked out on canvas. It happens with Anjanou and John when they're on that porch scene where she says relationships are hard. You never understood that relationships are hard. At every single stage of this film, it is the women that step up and say, let me tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. So I'm glad that you recognized that in the film. In terms of the paintings themselves, I mean, what I wanted to do with this film, you said your father is an artist, and so that means that you've seen the process of a piece go from idea to object. Most people haven't seen that before. Most people don't get to engage with that. So for me, that was something I really wanted to dig into in making this film, was how do I visualize the process of an idea to the canvas? I didn't want it to be literal, right? I didn't want the paintings to be like, oh, I'm having a problem with my father, so let me paint a picture of me having a problem with my father. You'll notice that the paintings are not didactic like that, right? Because they're my paintings and I don't tend to make didactic paintings like that. So the paintings are more exploratory. The paintings are more magical. And you know, the first one that enters in, right? What do we have? We have these canvases that are pushed into the composition by Terrell's younger self, right? This strategy is almost like, in some ways it's this gift to Terrell, but it's also, is it this curse, right? Is it like Sisyphus pushing this rock up a hill? How do we save this boy from this cycle of having to do this again? When does he get to rest? And conceptually within the film, he gets to rest at the end. When Terrell goes to that painting, he steps into that moment of trauma and that thing that plays again and again and again and again in his head. And as his adult self, he goes into that moment and he rescues that child from that moment and places the child on the looking chair, on the chair of inspiration for him, on the very chair that we started the movie in. We start the movie in that chair and then we end the movie in that chair. I don't even know if that answered the question, but
you sure did. As far as the unfinished work and the reconciliation, my father would always say, you know when it's done. I believe it's the same with reconciliation, and the artwork is stunning. This was a gorgeous film. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Sowell from Washington, D.C. First, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. This film for this whole year been my favorite film this year. When I was interviewing Anjanou and Andra for The Deliverance, I said I had to give them their props for this film because all of you guys collectively basically gave me a blessing watching this film. And with this film, obviously talks about the topic of forgiveness, particularly in the Black community. And it revealed an area where in my life, where at the end of watching that film, I had a call to action. What call to action would you want to give to audiences when they're watching this film, revealing areas of unforgiveness in their life and people they need to forgive too, or forgive themselves?
Wow. I mean, I can't help but like ask what your call to action was. What was it? What was the call to action for you? I don't want to let you off the hook that easy.
No, I'm glad that. No, thank you. Throwing that back at me. No, I think it's also as I'm me and my wife, we just got married, how that there was areas in our life where I had to forgive, my mother. As I'm, eventually becoming a parent, is that seeing that how that unforgiveness of that when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't understand why she was so overprotective of me, and I felt like to the point I was being suffocated sometimes. But really, at the end of the day, now in my adult life, I'm having a sense of being grateful because I know that some people didn't have that, and I didn't understand that as a child. And then I actually gave her the gratitude when I was a child, and I do now as an adult. So it basically just want to say I had to give her apology. Hey, mom, and I didn't treat you right as I was getting, growing up. I just want to offer you a sincere apology. But then she apologized to me because she understand like, hey, yeah, I might have been too overprotective, but it's all out of love because I didn't get that. I didn't receive that. So and now here we are having this conversation from parent to child as I'm reaching parenthood. So if anything, it was just a blessing just having that conversation that I feel like I didn't have growing up. So yeah, and that's where the call to action was for me.
I love that, man. I mean, dude, how often do you get to work on something that has this kind of impact in the world, right? Like we made some art. That's what we did. We made some art and it went out to the world and folks are coming back and telling us like what that work is doing. See, this is the work actually working. And so, you ask about a call to action, and I think the challenge for me with the call to action is what I am beginning to understand is everybody takes the thing that they need out of this film. So let me give you an example. My auntie and my cousin came to see the film in New York. And my cousin, we grew up very much the same way. He was sometimes on the back of that truck with me. And his father and my father, they ran together in the streets. It was very, whatever. We ain't got to get into details about that. But my auntie, she saw the film, and at the end, she goes, "Baby, I'm so happy that he forgave his father at the end of this film. Like, I know it was hard. I know it was hard, but I'm so happy." And my cousin was like, "He ain't forgive him. What you talking about? That's not what happened, right?" And so I've now come to realize that depending on where you are in your journey, you will interpret the end of this film in a way that's necessary for you. And so as far as like a call to action, my call to action is only to open yourself up to the experience. Like open yourself up to the experience in watching this film and let the work do its work.
It's funny, when you say call to action, I mean, I think about some of my friends, right? That have real daddy issues. And they're like, in their 60s, you know what I mean? And I'm saying, whoa, how can that continue on for that long? And then they said, man, if you only knew what was done to me as a child, those things have taken toll on me over the years and inside of my relationship. So I guess I would say that the call to action for me would be that start really going in, even if that person is basically no longer here on this planet, you still got to figure out a way to deal with it within yourself. Like, like how do you kind of reconcile inside of yourself what this is? And like Titus said, you're going to pull something from this film that's going to help you. You know what I mean? And once again, with these guys, I had one friend that saw it. He said, wow, I walked down the street after the film was over and I had to take a long walk. And he said the whole time I was walking, I was just looking up at the sky. Me and my dad had been gone 20 years. That's what my friend said. He said, but I kept saying, I forgive you, Dad. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. So yeah, like Titus said, you're going to be able to pull something from this that's going to help you. And especially, like I said, with people that definitely have daddy issues.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say much better than that, man. The only thing I would share is I feel like maybe for me personally, like, I don't know that I necessarily feel like there is a single call to action, right? Like that I hope people go out and do any certain thing. I mean, we're doing a lot already in our lives, right? Part of what I think the like magic of cinema and of theater is that, broadly speaking, it's a dark place into which we shine light, right? And so if we imagine our bodies, our psyches as that dark room, maybe shining the light of our consciousness on things that we've buried inside is the work, right? Like maybe that's the work, just to become aware of the things that maybe we haven't talked about or haven't expressed that may or may not lead to forgiveness or have even to do with forgiveness. It may just be that kind of inner self work, that we need to do. So if nothing else, I hope it invites people to consider for themselves, what are the things that I haven't shed light on in my life? So I think that's one. If there is a like more call to action thing, I will just offer, I hope that people feel inspired to tell other people to come and see the movie.
There you
go.
There you go.
This
Totally,
film
yes.
is like, it was so, Titus can speak best about this. It was so challenging to make this movie, and I think had he chosen to go the traditional route, I don't know that the movie would have gotten made, right? And when I think about all the movies like this, all the movies that Black and brown folks work so hard to try to make, we can't afford to lose this art, and I think the only way that I can think of, right, that we can continue to make stories like these is if people come out in droves and see it and support it and talk about it and tell other people to go and see it and talk about it. So I hope y'all find it. I hope your readers and listeners find it useful, and I hope they come and check us out.
Can I don't know how much time we have, but I would actually like to step into that conversation just a little bit. I feel like this is the right context to have that conversation. A lot of our films don't get made. There's a lot of people who are great writers, who are great actors, and our films don't get made. This film got made because we went a very unconventional route. We didn't go with Hollywood funding to make this thing happen. We had folks who were coming to us saying that they would give us funding, but that funding had strings attached to it. We'll give you the money, but you got to cast that person, you got to cast that person. And it's the same lineup. But how do we grow up the next generation of talent if we keep choosing the same people every single time? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I sent my script to a friend, and I said to him, I said, this is my script. Just take a read. He read it. He came back. He said, look, I don't know anything about Hollywood, and I don't know anything about making movies, but I have money, and I'd be happy to give it to you in order to make this film. So what that meant was, his name is Sean Cotton. What that meant was,
got his number.
That's right.
He'll be here on the 24th. What that meant was, we had the freedom to do it the way that we wanted to do it. What that meant was, when Hollywood said, oh, this is what you're supposed to do, this is who you're supposed to choose, we could go, nah, that ain't what we want to do. We're trying to make art over here. So y'all can stay over there with that. And we are going to be here and make this film. And so we were able to make a film that I now recognize, maybe y'all already knew, but I now recognize is not what Hollywood expects. This is not your traditional go into the movie. This is a different thing. This is, in many ways, this is a mission-driven film. And we are realizing, as I said before, that the work is now in the world doing the work that it needs to do. And so the call to action is what Andre said, for real. And that is, Hollywood will not understand that we want to see our lives reflected in this way unless we show up at the theaters. For better or worse, that's how the tally is counted. That's how we know. That's the measure of success in this particular industry. So the call to action, go see the movie. Go tell somebody that you love to see the movie, and then, maybe go see the movie again.
No, it's absolutely got my wife to watch it again, making a sermon out of it. So yeah, definitely. But thank you guys. Thank you for this blessing. Thank you.
Well, we want to thank you once again for this conversation. We appreciate it so much. On behalf of the largest group of Black TV and film critics, we want to thank you for joining us on this season of the Roundtable.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas.